the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse, as a last resort, to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, recognizing that in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the ideal of free human beings enjoying freedom from fear and want can only be achieved if the conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as his civil and political rights. Considering the obligation of the states under the Charter of the United Nations to promote universal respect for and observance of human rights and freedoms. When you read and look into and study the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, when you look into the Covenant of Social, Economic, Cultural Rights, when you look into the Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, you are going to see these words indicated: human and man. They're very clearly indicated, and they very clearly address us, the human and the man. You will also find in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in the Covenants the mention of the legal person. It's a very quick mention, and they reference the legal person and they inform us the rights of the legal person. It is there. Now when you go into the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you're not going to find the word human or man. Not at all. And if you go into the acts, the regulations, and the statutes that guide each province or that guide Canada, you will not find that word human or man. You will find the word just person. Persons and subjects. Subjects. Now, in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, what you will find is an everyone. You do find everyone. And everyone will or can include the human and the man. That's where you're finding the expression of the right of the human and the man in everyone. So every time in law, if you look into the Criminal Code of Canada, you'll find the same thing. You'll find that there's indications of persons, and indications of citizens, and indications of everyone. So just to be clear, every time when you look into the law and you see everyone, this is where you can draw your rights from as a human. This is where you can draw your rights from as a man. Now when I use the word human, I'm automatically associating the two to mean the same, human and man. You can, if you push the point and say, well, there's a difference in between human and man. All your rights are established within the charters and within the United Declaration of Human Rights and Freedoms. And in those charters, it does use the word human, but it does use the word man. And it's expressing the two to mean the same. They're not making a distinction in there. You can make a distinction if you want. That's fine. It's your life. It's your understanding. But in the charters, they're not making a distinction. They're actually yoking it together and saying, when you say human, you say man. When you say person or juridical personality, you do not say man or human. That's the big difference there. Not so much on what you're terminologizing yourself. But when you say everyone, you use the term everyone, you're including that designation of man or human. A human is born free. You're born free. And it's your right. Your right. Now the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom says that everyone has the right to liberty. The right to freedom. Everyone has that right. Now if it's a right that you have, it's something that you can claim to. It's something that you should be able to express. Because just like example, if I go to the SAAQ and I pay for a permit and they give me the right to drive as a legal person, I can express that right. You receive that right and that permit to drive, you go and express that right. You go into your car and you drive. Well, here every human being is free and it's your right. Now you can learn to express that right. You can learn how to operate that right. Since you've been young, no one has taught you how to operate in that right to be free. We've been taught that we are not free because they've bound us up through the legal person. This is a process of going through learning how to be free, how to acquire our freedom, and how to operate that right. Now, a person in law in Canada is considered a subject. of Her Majesty. And there are classes of persons in Canada in operation, not just one type of person. When you say legal person, you got to qualify that. You don't just say, well, legal person, and it means everything. No, because there's legal persons, and you can see as a government minister, a transportation minister, that's a legal person, and he has certain duties and responsibilities. Now there's the police officer, who's considered a legal person also, and the responsibilities and duties that that police officer has is different than the minister. And we can keep on going. A postal man, a man who delivers the mail, well, he's considered a person also under law, and his duties are different than the police officer or the minister. And same with government service agents. So these are classes of persons. They're all legal persons under law, but in their duties and responsibilities, they are afforded different rights and freedoms, different duties. That's why you say there's classes of persons in operation in Canada. Oath or affirmation of citizenship. I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. So fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. The Canadian citizen is considered a legal person. When you say I am Canadian citizen, you are saying you are a legal person. And that legal person is one who owes allegiance to Her Majesty. And that legal person is actually in servitude to Her Majesty. That's what they've done. That's what the law states, clearly states it. And it gives them the right to regulate you. Because you are a legal person who owes allegiance to Her Majesty, and you're serving Her Majesty, well then when a king or queen makes demand on the servants obey. Now she doesn't command you directly. The old lady doesn't come to your house and say, I'm the Queen of England and I'm here to tell you to pay your house taxes. No, but she does that through law. And her servants, which is the government, exercise on her behalf this authority. Now, it's clear that we have to pay for our permits, the rights and the freedoms that we get. Everything that we get here in Canada, we have to pay for. If you want water to come into your house through a water connection, so you have water to drink and a toilet to flush and water to wash yourself, well, they include that in your house taxes. If you check your house tax bill, you're going to see that there's an indication for water service. Now, a human has water for free. Everybody should get water for free. Here in Canada, the Queen, Her Majesty, says that her servants should pay for their water. You don't even have the right to water for free. Article 19.1. Charges for rights and privileges. The Governor in Council may, on the recommendation of the Treasury Board, by regulation, prescribe the fees or charges to be paid for a right or privilege conferred by or on behalf of Her Majesty in right of Canada by means of a license, permit, or other authorization by the persons or classes of persons on whom the right or privilege is confirmed, or b. authorize the appropriate minister to prescribe by order those fees or charges subject to such terms and conditions as may be specified by the Governor in Council. As a Canadian citizen, every right you have is regulated, and you must pay for it. A human is free to enjoy his or her rights. Now the whole issue is, again, here in Canada, we are not considered humans. We are considered legal persons. They do acknowledge human beings here in Canada. However, you have to take the step forward to make them acknowledge your rights as a human being. Otherwise, you remain a Canadian citizen who is in servitude and owes allegiance to the Queen. And whatever the Queen gives a command through the government, you're under obligation to obey. So when the police officer says, slow down, or the police officer says, do this, do that, you're under obligation to obey, because you are a Canadian citizen. And when they send you a house bill for your taxes, you are under obligation to obey because you are a Canadian citizen. And when they say if you want to go fishing and go catch a trout and have a nice supper, it takes a permit and you can only do this on certain days, well, you as a Canadian citizen are under obligation to obey. And if you need to travel to go see a sick relative 250 kilometers away from you, they'll say to you, if you want to travel in a private conveyance, you can't do that as a Canadian citizen. I'll give you a right to travel if you follow my rules. Come here, pay me money, get a permit, and I'll return you a right to travel as a Canadian citizen. And this list can go on and on and on. Now, the whole problem stems from us. We don't understand, we don't accept, we don't acknowledge, and we don't operate through our freedoms and our rights. Because again, we've never been told there is such a thing that is in existence. We've only known servitude. We've only known slavery. Because from when we've been young, that's what our parents were involved in. That's how our parents were operating, and they passed us on to us. In school, in secular education, they never taught us any difference. We were never taught any of these fundamental rights. We were never taught any of these charters or any of these covenants. We were taught things that were not profitable to us as human beings, only profitable to us as legal persons. This is basically the hierarchy structure that is going on here in Canada, where you have the Majesty claiming the de facto power, and Privacy Council, who helps Her Majesty and acts on recommendations of Her Majesty, and then you have the government, who acts on, well, the recommendation of the Privy Council and the people who are voting here in Canada, and then you have the Canadian citizen. So the Canadian citizen is last on and bottom on the list. Really a subject. But in the laws, when you look, it says that we are classes of subjects. And it's very easily seen. Like I said, any type of title or designation that you see out there, police officer, postman, even chef, mechanic, these are all legal persons. That's what they're considered under law. They're not, you don't say, well, he's a mechanic, he's a human being, and he's a mechanic. That word wouldn't make sense. To then, when you say, well, he's a mechanic, you're designating a legal person. And most of us don't understand that. And most of us don't understand that when you say that you're a human, or when you say that you are a man or woman, you take a different designation, relieving yourself of a lot of this that is going on. Because this is all fictional. All this is fictional. Now I have a question to those watching my video. Why, as being a Canadian citizen, knowing that the law says, this is what the law states, whether you want to appropriate it in your life and say, well, no, that doesn't work for me, and then go on the street and try it. And say, well, I'm free and I'm not a subject of the Queen, and I'm not under subjection to your authority, and see what happens. If you don't know how to defend yourself properly, you'll wind up in a lot of trouble. Because the truth is that as a Canadian citizen, you are indeed under the authority of the Queen, and you are considered a servant of the Queen and a servant of this system, and you have no choice. And a lot of us, when we experience that power that's in operation here in Canada, when it hurts us and when it damages us, when we're alone and no one's around us, we'll say, this is unjust, this is not fair, why should it be like this? I don't understand why this is going on. And exactly, it shouldn't be like this, and it's not fair. And it's only going on because you've never been taught otherwise. You've never been shown that you don't have to give away your freedoms. You don't have to give away your liberty. You don't have to give away your rights to this system. In fact, this system that's in operation is under accountability to you. It owes you. It's clear in the law. We're not taught that, and some people who may be hearing this will get upset, but nevertheless, it's true. You can pursue a living if you desire. That's your right. They've given you that right to your legal person. But nevertheless, you can enjoy a living also, if you understand how to enjoy a living here on earth and here in Canada. It's in operation. The laws are there for you. It just takes time to reclaim your rights and time to reclaim your understanding about who you really are, and walk away mentally and walk away spiritually from this commercial system. Not saying don't use it physically, but to say, I'm not going to be part of this anymore. I'm not going to strive as that legal person anymore. I know I have freedom and rights, and it's very clearly expressed in law. Now they say that we are subjects of Her Majesty, and when you go into look in the Parliament, and when you go look at the constitutions, how they are worded, you're going to see something very funny. The Constitution of Canada, Article 9. The executive government and authority of and over Canada is hereby declared to continue and be vested in the Queen. The Constitution Act of Canada, 1867. Powers of the Parliament. Article 91. It shall be lawful for the Queen, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and House of Commons, to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Canada in relation to all matters not coming within the classes of subjects by this Act, assigned exclusively to the legislators of the provinces, and for greater certainty, but not so to as to restrict the generality of the foregoing terms of this section. It is hereby declared that, notwithstanding anything in this Act, the exclusive legislative authority of Parliament of Canada extends to all matters coming within the classes of subjects next hereafter enumerated, that is to say. Now they start to name a list: the public debt and property, the regulation of trade and commerce, unemployment insurance, the raising of money by any mode of system or of taxation, the borrowing of money on the public credit, postal service, the census and statistics, the militia, military and naval service and defense, and the list keeps on going on. The Constitution Act of Canada, Article 91, it says, it shall be lawful for the Queen to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Canada, in relation to all matters not coming within the classes of subjects. You notice that? Classes of subjects. So first of all, it's the Queen who is making the laws for Canada. That's what the Constitution Act says. Now, she does it through the ministers. It's the government who are erecting the laws, but nevertheless the power structure says it's the Queen. The Queen is making the laws. Now, why would you allow the Queen, who has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your family, nothing to do with your life, make laws to control you and regulate you? Why would you do that? It's very clear that's what it says. I don't anymore. What about you? Now, it says that in relation to all matters not coming within the classes of subjects. The latter part of that verse states that the legislative authority extends to all matters coming within the classes of subjects, next here enumerated. And then they'll start to say the banking system, loans, taxation and stuff. They're trying to say that these are all the laws that they're erecting that will be enforced upon someone. Now they never state who they're going to be enforced upon. If you read this verse in the context of meaning classes of subjects, is referring to the list of things that they enumerate down there, and they never tell you who is the subject, who is this they're going to be enforced upon. However, when you approach this with a common law understanding of wording, and when you approach this knowing that a subject is one who owes allegiance, and they're talking about the person there, then it's very clear what this verse is saying. The last part, for example, legislative authority extends to all matters coming within the classes of persons. Persons. Next here enumerated. So they're saying that the legislative authority makes laws to control the persons in these groups, in these ways. So in the banking system, in the taxing system, and in all the lists that they enumerated there. But if you don't understand what it's talking about here, because the way they phrased the word, it was to try and confuse us. When you read that and you don't understand, if you've never looked into the law and you don't understand that a Canadian citizen is a subject who owes allegiance, is not free, is considered yoked, is considered a servitude to the monarchy, then when you don't understand what they mean by subject here, you think that they're referring to the subject, meaning a subject here, an article of law, or an article, a descriptive article, that type of subject. But they're not referring to that, they're referring to the legal person. The Crown Liabilities and Proceedings Act, Article 31.1. Except as otherwise provided in any other Act of Parliament, and subject to the subsection 2, the laws relating to interest on judgments in causes of action between subject and subject, that are in force in a province apply to judgments against the Crown. Crown Liability and Proceedings Act, Article 32. Except as otherwise provided in this Act or in any other Act of Parliament, the laws relating to prescription and to limitations of actions in force in a province between subject and subject apply to any proceedings by or against the Crown. When you look into the acts and the regulations now, as you saw, when they're talking about what's going on, they'll describe subject and subject. So subject now referring to meaning an issue, an article, something, a subject, as you would know in school. You understand that definition of the word. And then the second word, subject, meaning the person, the one who is the subject to Her Majesty. But if you don't understand all this, when you start looking into the law, it can confuse you. You don't understand what the law is trying to express. However, when you get a good base and a good foundation, when you start reading these laws, it's very clear what they're saying. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Article 2. Everyone has the following fundamental freedoms. Article 3. Every citizen of Canada. Article 6. Every citizen of Canada. Article 7. Everyone has. Article 10. Everyone has the right. Article 11. Any person charged. When you're studying and looking for your freedom, when you see the word everyone or anyone, that should draw your attention, because that is the expression where a human or a man rights and freedoms are. Very clear. Everyone also will include a subject, a citizen, a person, whether legal or natural. Could be an individual, a party, a mayor, a cook, a teacher. We can just keep going on and on. Everyone includes everyone. However, they strip away your rights, they strip away your freedoms by taking away the wording everyone, because now it can't include a man anymore, and using the word, let's say, person or citizen. Because now when you use the designation citizen, it's not anymore referring to a man or a human, because a human is free, as you see in the covenants and as you see in the Universal Declaration. A human is free, but the citizen owes allegiance to Her Majesty and is not free. So they strip away your rights, they strip away your freedoms by calling you a person, a citizen.